It's the gambler's game. Pot Limit Omaha. Double the cards, quadruple the action. Gonna go over a few concepts about the great game in this part of the vlog, starting with the first. Wait for the turn, as in for it not to pair. Early position with a pretty hand, King Queen 9-7, all red, double suited. As I play it from early position though, I would however say it's an overrated hand, especially the most likely scenario, a multi-way pot, since I don't make nut flushes. Still good though, don't get me wrong, which is why I play it here, and get a pot juicer raise from the small blind. We go 7 ways, where I flop the world. An 8-card nut wrap with ace, 9, or 8 for a straight. 3 queens, along with kings for the second nut straight, and an up and down straight flush draw. 10 outs to the nuts, an additional 11 for the second nuts, and a 6 of diamonds, possibly good, all adding up to 22 outs. After the small blind preflop raiser checks, the big blind pots it into the field. This to me is almost always a set, since nut flush draws want to hit their hand first and also get more people invested into the pot. I could of course just pot it here and get it in, but I want to utilize position while I'll still have it. Other players might also want to get into the action with draws I dominate. Everyone else folds though. We make the king high straight with king 9 on the turn. Villain could have ace king, but we should be good against a likely set. The board doesn't pair against his pocket jacks, and we win a nice pot. Looking at the equities of our 2 hands on the flop, you see we're actually favored against Villain's top set, which means we could actually raise for value with no pair, get it all in on the flop, versus the nuts in top set. I'm going to go over the possible scenarios on the turn to show you how we can utilize our position if our opponent has a set, and wait for the board not to pair. First scenario is the bad one. The equity can many times be exactly 0, here all the way up to 5% with the straight flush draw. Tempting, but we can obviously comfortably get away here on the turn and only lose the $140 pot size bet on the flop. Second scenario is a neutral card, assuming we just get it in on the turn, a slight favorite actually still, and calculate our EV from there. The last scenario is where we hit, which happens just over half the time on the turn alone. Our equity jumps to 75%, and even a little higher actually if we hit a card that blocks board pairs. Calculating our equity from this scenario, adding them all together, we end up with an EV of $179 more dollars if we just get it all in on the flop. Almost twice as much. If your opponent has a set and won't fold to a raise, wait for the board not to pair, then push your combo draw. Second principle now is what I first heard named by Fernando, aka Jay Nandez, the sandwich principle. PLO bomb pot with absolute trash makes another man a treasure. Flopping the nuts with a 3-card nut gut shot as a tiny bit of backup. I like to think of every hand in Omaha as a drawing hand though. In these multi-way scenarios, it is also very likely we are chopping. I check, being way out of position, and the button shorter stacked pots. The player to my direct right makes the call and is in the sandwich position. I have 2 options, I believe. Pot, or min click it back to 280 in order for the button to jam, opening the action, sandwiching the other player. Betting pot would be 700. That's the better option, only if for some reason we believe the button will likely either fold or just call. Not too likely with that short of stack left. Like the sandwich, much better. But being new to PLO, I play it like Hold'em and make it a worse possible option than just potting it, 500. No sandwich, even leaving $200 from the second villain off the table for a side pot. Not a well-played hand by me, leaving a bad taste in my mouth. After a blank turn and a teeny tiny side pot, I pot the turn, and the sandwich player folds after some deliberation. I end up chopping with the button. Could have been a huge pot if I clicked it back and got to repot it after the action got back to me. Key dynamics when it comes to PLO especially, stack sizes. Pay attention to the shorter ones. I do try to learn from my mistakes, however, with potting a nice Broadway hand with nut clubs in the big blind, getting all 5 players to call. This is just how San Luis Obispo area plays PLO at 2 in the morning. We flop the nuts, get potted by the small blind with an extremely likely smaller flush. In this scenario, we are actually the sandwich player, with JD, a shorter stack that could potentially go all in, opening the action to the small blind. We are also in position on the small blind for a side pot potentially. Don't mind continuing as a call in general. The additional dynamic in this hand of possibly using the reverse sandwich card on T makes me like a call much better. Ending up being a mute point, but I do like the play. Turn pairs the board. Obviously not good, but after T checks, we bet the turn and river for value, which is much more likely to be a smaller flush than a boat. I like the taste of this sandwich play much more than the other one. Last hand of the vlog, probably the most important concept. PLO is just like housing. Position, position, position. In the hijack with Queen 10, 10, 5 double suited. Nothing special, but will likely be against the blinds, who I believe overly defend. Flop is perfect. Super disguised full house nuts for me. I get 1 customer. I just don't believe players adjust well in these hugely multi-way scenarios. He might not be thinking, I have a queen or pocket 5s. So I go for the check raise on the turn 7. AC doubles it to 800. No way we can play rivers even decently out of position. So many scare cards on the river, so it's time to go all in or fold. Not great having pocket 10s and only 2 outs if I'm behind. Pretty much the best hand I will ever have in this spot. After villain quickly calls, a jack on the river is very scary, but I dodged 5 bullets. 3 9s and 2 kings. He had king, king, queen 9. Semi-bluff on his part, trying to get ace-queen to fold is what it looks like strategically to me. I actually like a check back on the turn unless he had the ace for top trips or a boat himself. Then a semi-bluff like I thought he's doing with his hand with more equity like king jack 9 as side cards for 9 outs instead of 5. 2 gigantic sessions for me at 6.4K and ending the month with 6K. My second and third biggest ever. Lead to a fantastic start to 2020 for me. Let me know in the comments if you like me splitting the vlogs into 2 parts, Hold'em in Omaha. Also, what game do you prefer to see more hand history content from? Or any specific topic you want me to think about and analyze? Talk to you next month.